Hey everyone, welcome to the stream. It's been a while since we've had a stream, but I just wanted to give a quick update and do a little bit of development with you all tonight. A couple milestones I wanted to mention. We got our first Patreon subscriber, so that's really cool. It's really cool to see that working. I mean, at this point, it's still just a friend, but I'm really happy that they decided to do that. I hope it means that they believe in what we're trying to accomplish here, and that it is worth paying for. Um, I mean, you're the judge of that. I always think it's a little bit more. You want to have a little bit more like Reddit. You can use it for free, and I totally agree with that. Or Wikipedia, you can use them for free. You get all the features, and if you really like what you're using, if you really think this is valuable, then go ahead and pay for it. But it's the option of being able to do that, and not being forced to do that before you've even seen before you've even opened it or before you've even used it. So other than that, we released a blog post a couple weeks ago. It just outlines the vision for what we're trying to achieve here, as well as some of our upcoming development milestones and when we plan to go to a hard launch. Um, so what I was going to work on today was actually right now. So let's just go ahead and show you folks what's going on. Let me go into my developer tools here, and we'll go over to not any of these, but more tools, and then sensors. Yeah. Then in our sensors, we can override our geolocation. So we'll just say we're in Berlin. Refresh this. Although actually, you know what? I'll have to do it in an incognito tab, so I don't have any cache or user settings. I probably have to go back into developer tools again. Into sensors. Here, once again, we'll override our location. We'll say Berlin. We'll hit find location. I hit allow, and oh, look at that. I'm in Berlin. Awesome. So one thing I've noticed is that geolocation is great, but at the end of the day, it's a client sending a server, whatever, a latitude and a longitude, and there's not really a whole lot of amazing ways to validate that that's actually their location. I'll get onto that a little bit more later, but the thing I wanted to show here is that, and you see how I navigate over each of these issues in Berlin, and at the bottom we have our REST endpoint path, which is just notes and then slash 148, and we see how we're actually 148, 150, 151. So for anyone who knows anything, or for most people, I guess I should say, that basically means that's basically a primary key, and that's me exposing a primary key from my database to the actual front-facing client. And I guess I just hadn't prioritized this work yet or really understood why I shouldn't be doing that, but it's really clear now that I really shouldn't be doing that. For one, I mean, semantically, databases have a primary key. It's unique. It's usually an incrementing integer, and it's a part. It's a system. It's a piece of a database system that's internal to the system and should remain internal to the system. But also exposing the primary key as an incrementing ID can also expose various business sensitive data, such as I could create an issue at hourly intervals, and I could look at the primary key and then subtract the newest one from the oldest one and see how many issues get created on this platform per hour. So there's a couple different reasons why you don't want to expose it. So anyways, I was working on making a modification to that, and that's what we're going to work on today. But in the process of doing that, I actually ran into a couple other problems. First off was um, the first problem we ran into when we were working on that was I was trying to deploy my backend, and I had just gone through my AWS and cleaned up some of my S3 buckets that I'd created from before that I didn't think I was using anymore. And then I went to go deploy my backend, so all my lambdas to AWS, and I hit an issue with a bucket missing, and then I realized that those buckets that I thought weren't being used were actually being used by this front end, this framework you can use alongside your project called serverless. So if anyone is on here is thinking about using serverless or is using serverless, just remember that in its setup with AWS, it creates S3 buckets to, I think to upload your CloudFormation templates so that they can be deployed or something to that effect. But yeah, just don't forget about that. It took me a while to kind of figure out why none of my stuff was deploying anymore, so that's always kind of a pain, but we got through it. The next thing kind of that I was working on is more not so much development, but it's more just kind of some context and thought into the decisions that get made when you're building a platform like this. So the one thing I just showed you in this incognito tab is how easy really it was for you to actually modify your location. And when I was getting into this project as something that is going to be for the people, right? That's kind of why I'm building this. I want it to be for the people. I want people to have open access to be able to discuss the issues they believe are important. And I want other people to say, hey, you know what? Look at that. I'm reading that. That resonates with me. That's important to me too. And it's by this means that I really believe that you can drive some sort of consensus, or through this sort of everyone kind of picks and chooses voluntarily the things that are important to them, or they can create a new issue and talk about the things that are important to them. But for the longest time, I was under the impression that, you know what, I don't want users to be able to switch between locations and view all the issues there and see what issues are important in different locations. I thought that would be, I th- and I mean, I'll just be honest with you. I'm not going to try and hide anything, but I will say, I was thinking to myself, you know what, that data is really valuable, and I could probably sell that data to marketers. So you could do a market report, and someone would purchase it, and it would say, hey, in this certain location, these are the most like these are the most important issues, or these are the most important issues over time, and how has that changed? But the longer I look at it, the more I just say to myself, you know what, this is meant to be a public and open platform, and the and selling data to marketers for whatever reasons is kind of uh, antithetical to what it is that I was trying to accomplish. So I thought about that one for a good long while after trying to implement a way to obfuscate the location so that it couldn't be easily guessed in a REST API. So just trying to create URLs that aren't easily guessable. For example, if you look at Google has a kind of, it's not google.com, but it's a Google website, and it hosts all their public content, say your images or something. Whenever you like link out an image from your images in Google, whatever you use, your image service that uses Google. But when you share out those links to your individual images, it actually just gives you a really long URL. Now, you could be logged out. There's no authentication on these URLs. They're just so big that it's so impossible to guess what one might be that they are just secure enough in that sense. But if you were to share it with someone, they would be able to view it, and they could share it out, and other people would be able to view it, and you would have no control over who sees what. As long as you have the URL, you can view that. And I was trying to implement that with take issue, and then I was thinking about it, and I was like, man, you know what? This is causing it's more complicated to try to lock down this functionality. But then I said to myself, why am I trying to lock down this functionality in the first place? This is meant to be a public and an open platform, and that's pretty much the way I have to build this. And if you really like it, you can pay for it, and that will have to do as a business model at this point. And you know what? I'm fine with that, because what's more important here is that we're building a platform where people's voices matter. Everyone's voice matters on every issue, and you can really send a message to your community and say, hey, this is what the people care about. Let's find a solution. Let's actually deal with what the people care about. That's the vision, that's the importance. So um, notwithstanding any of that, I will get into what we actually want to accomplish here, which is actually what this video is supposed to be about, is actual development. And here I am ranting about the project for 20 minutes. So sorry about that. Hopefully you enjoyed what you heard, but I think we're going to go into the development right now. Let's just check the so like I said, each of these IDs kind of point to a primary key, and that's not really what you want. So what I did was I looked into Postgres and was like, well, what other things can I use as a primary key? Well, something that's not incrementing and is somewhat random and distributed is a UUID. Postgres has a UUID data type built in, and I'm not going to show exactly I'm not going to show pgadmin on my streams anymore, just because it exposes things like your database name and your database user, and I couldn't find a way to turn that off. If anyone has a suggestion on another Postgres, admin tool that would be safe for stream, please let me know. I would definitely like to use it. I think it's important to show that side of the story. But in the absence of that, I'm just going to show you this really cool script. That was really all that we needed to do to actually get that new column in the database. So first of all, you need to import this external library so you can generate UUIDs. And then I'm just altering my existing table, and I'm adding a public ID column, and it's a UUID type. And the default value, if you don't assign one, and I'm never assigning one because I just want the default to always generate a v4 UUID. So every time a record will get inserted, and automatically I will get a UUID generated for that record. And then I can take that record and I can expose that record in the URL rather than the primary key. So that we'll be able to keep the primary key an internal detail of the database, and then that also we will be able to expose the public ID, which is tied to the record, as the URL. So let's jump over to our IDE. What is that, 20 minutes into the video, we'll go into the IDE. All right, so basically what we want to do here is we want to find the place where we are putting the rendering the notes. So I think it's pretty easy to do. You just got to look for the notes. Actually, so it's not in this page, it's actually in home, and then we render the notes in our notes function down here, and we pass the location ID. So what we're going to do is we're actually going to pass the place ID. So because we've added a column to the database and my SQL query is actually just selecting star, that should mean that everything we see here should just get updated. So we should have a place ID, but I think we actually need to set the, oh wait, that's not even the right one. Notes. I don't want my headphones to turn off, so I'm going to just turn some music off and really quietly in the background. That's all right. Okay. Back to where we're at here. So we have a notes slash notes ID. So it isn't home. So it's not going to be note.id. It's going to be note.place ID. Wait. Note.id. Yeah. It's going to be the place ID as well. Great. Then we need to location ID, notes. Yeah, see what calls notes. Where do we define notes? That might be enough actually. Let's just refresh and see what happens. That's not even the right ID. It worked, but it's not place ID, it's public ID. There we go. Now, what I don't think will work is actually... So that's better. That's much better. You have no idea. You can't tell anything between those, so that's pretty good. One thing I kind of wanted to get rid of the dashes from the URL, but I also kind of wanted to add the slug in there as well. So yeah, that's actually something I should mention. I had that thought for quite a while. I would just go ahead and I would take this title and make it into a slug. So make it all lowercase, add hyphens between everything, and then hyphen, and then some sort of random ID at the end. But I was thinking about I mean, this is meant to be a global app in all the different languages that might be used for it. And I was thinking about how I was going to store slug if it's foreign languages inside my database, thinking about things like character sets, but at the end of the day, I just didn't know for sure whether it was going to become a problem down the road. So I just decided to stick with numbers, and so that's kind of the system we're at now. Now the thing about this, so basically what we've done is we've changed the input argument to the notes endpoint, which essentially just sends that argument to a function on the back end, and that function does something with that argument. So what we're going to do is we're going to go into the function that handles so we have to go into the API project. In the API project, we have a function here called list, and we have, you can see here, it pulls in we actually want get. Get pulls the ID off the path parameters of the event, which is passed into the function that runs. This is a Lambda function that runs on Amazon's infrastructure, and we basically are passing this ID into the query. So we could just do this. We can rename this all public ID, and pretty much everything else can mainly stay the same. So instead of taking the ID, we're going to take the public ID. We'll still name it ID. It's not a big deal. What we also have to change is this. So we'll change this. We'll select that, from our table where the public ID is equal to *1. Now, I maybe should add an index on, if I'm going to be looking things up from that column, I should have an index on that column as well. I don't currently, but I will look into how to do that with Postgres. I'm pretty confident it's not going to be that difficult. It'll just basically be the same type of method that you use to create an index on a primary key. So, well, anyways, we'll change this. This is our get function. There's not a whole lot to change. We have our nice console 2, which gives us a bunch of windows, and we can go ahead and deploy that to we'll just use serverless to deploy the get function on its own. Now you can deploy your entire set of functions as they're defined in serverless. You can deploy your whole stack, whatever you've defined in serverless, um, with just a serverless deploy. But if you just want to test individual functions, you can go ahead and do it from here. Now, there's also a way to actually mock these functions right from the terminal as well. And if you've followed the serverless stack tutorial, you'll know how to do that. It's not exceptionally stream friendly since you do have to enter all your credentials into a terminal. That, I mean, I'm sure there's ways you could get around it, but I don't find this development cycle to be too bad. It pretty much updates in a few seconds, and we'll refresh this to make sure everything's all right. Okay, we're getting the UIDs. Let's go into it, and we get a 500. So that means we've failed. But it should kind of tell us why. So we'll take a look there. See what happens here. It's just not going to find anything, I think. Yeah, internal server error. Congratulations. So let's see here. Passing public ID in our home function, we have an HR. Oh, you know what? So this is actually, I believe, just going to be called ID no matter what we pass it. And that's because in our serverless.yaml, we have defined the path variable for this particular REST endpoint to be called ID. So don't think it matters what you name it. It just has to be called ID. What this says, it just has to match what you have set up in your serverless.yaml. Regardless, we need to still replace what we're getting to look at the public ID. So let's deploy that one more time. I'm intentionally Xing off. I would watch and see how long it takes to build, except I don't know if it exposes any sensitive information. Not like anyone's watching. What am I doing? But yeah, I think it's pretty much done. So we'll just refresh this and okay, item not found. So that's good. I mean, didn't work, but I don't know. Do we still have the old URLs? 184 or something? No, nothing works anymore. Oh, that's funny. Okay, so I think we can still just look at the front page. Like, no, none of these bring up anything. Okay, so maybe we public ID data.id was not working. And when we do the list, I'm pretty sure we select all, so we just return everything. So on that, well, clearly we have our public ID. Let's see here. Yeah, handle note click. All right, let's check that out. I don't know. Push the href onto the browser. Yeah, okay. So that just takes this and does note.publicID. Now note is just an empty array, and it would be getting public ID, and we pass public ID, and it's for some reason not hitting the right thing, but it should be. Oh, shoot. Okay, I'm gonna try this in PG admin and see where I might be going wrong. I'm just gonna pause my screen to do that. Yeah, so you guys can still hear me. You can't see anything right now because I'm opening PG admin and I don't want to expose any of my details, even though they're for dev, but still. Because it should be working. It's not working. And it's not airing out either, which is weird. Otherwise, I might just go into the CloudWatch logs for the Lambda and figure out what it's erroring on, but like it's not really erroring on anything. Clearly, there's definitely a UUID column, but definitely not. I'm gonna actually be able to run a query here. And we'll run our query. Republic ID equals. Go into, okay, network error, all kinds of problems going on now. Oh, what? Okay, I didn't do anything, and I just want to show you some weirdness. So I'm getting out of PG admin. I'm gonna go back and turn on my camera again, and okay, I just want to go back here, and we clicked on these, and we got an error, but they work just fine now. So, all right. Anyways, that's what we want. Now we're not exposing our primary key in the URL. Um, that's a success. So it didn't really take a lot of effort to do that. I would say the majority of the time and effort went into actually researching how to accomplish this in Postgres and what's the best way to make a more friendlier URL and also not expose internal database details like primary keys. Once I figured out, I looked at a couple different websites. I looked at Medium, I looked at Facebook, Stack Overflow. Medium did a really nice thing, like I said, with the slug followed by a random ID. Um, Due to different language concerns I have with this particular platform, I opted not to go that way and just stick with a number. CUID might look nicer actually without dashes, so maybe that's something I'll look at doing. Anyways, I'm going to try to get all the other issues, trying to get all the other pages working, referencing the notes, the issue's actual public ID rather than its primary key ID. So I'll keep working at that and updating the Twitter and letting everyone know when we're making progress. We'll keep working on all the things we're working on, and we'll keep making this platform better day by day. So thanks everyone for tuning in, and we'll talk to you next time. Ciao.